Hi, so I'm going to do a review of Birthright books 1 and 2. So, book 1 collects issues 1 to 25, book 2 collects the concluding chapters, so that's issues 26 to 50, and there's like an addendum from an image compilation comic tacked on at the end. And they also have sketches and work progress sketchbooks and covers in the back as well for the back matter. Each book has roughly around about 600 pages, sometimes a little bit more. They're $59.99 each, but the hardback's bigger than a standard collection. So they've got about an inch going out that way and an inch above as well. And a hardback, I mean, when you think about an epic collection, has about 450 pages, and they will charge you $54.99 for that. So with the new Marvel pricing, so you really do get a great saving. This came out originally in 2014. I remember getting the first issue, but I just didn't get to it after that because during that time I then switched, I think, to digital for a number of years, just due to personal circumstances, what I've shared before on my videos. So I was always aware of it, and I thought, oh, I'll get it when it's collected. When I started buying comics physically again, I thought I'll get it when it's collected. But I was getting so much stuff, I thought I just can't afford to get it in trade paperback. And then I saw this about a year ago, the first volume, I thought, and it was on for a really good price on the Bezos site. So I got that, and it was just on my shelf for about a year. But I'll read it. I will get around to reading it. But I'm always a bit off put when it's like a really big book like this. But then the final volume came out late last year, and I bought that early this year. And thought, I'm going to have to read it. And I've been off for 3 weeks at the moment with for health reasons. Basically, I've, I've got blood pressure, heart problems at the moment, and they've changed my medication. They've added another medication on, and it's given me like flu-like symptoms for like 2 weeks so far. I'm still not right, so I've got a constant headache, flushed, having trouble thinking, can't sleep very well at night, getting really vivid dreams, and I'm also got a very, very sore throat, and my sinuses are wrecked, and there's a whole list. It's like I've got a very severe flu. I'm aching all over, and it's just due to this new medication. They said it will take a few weeks for it to sort itself out, so I'm hoping it does soon because I can't afford to have any more time off work. So fingers crossed, see how I go tonight. But that's by the by. But it's given me time anyway to sit down and read these. And put it this way, combined, the story comes to about 1,100 or so pages, because obviously you get all the extras in it as well. And I read both books in 2.5 days. That's a sign of how good it is. So let's move on. So that's the cover, by the way, for the first book. Andrei Bressans, the artist. Joshua Williamson's the writer. They're the ones who did Night Ride as well recently. So it says, for the Rhodes family, losing their son was the most devastating thing that could have occurred, but it couldn't prepare them for what happened when he returned. Lost to a fantasy land beyond imagination, Mikey Rhodes has returned a powerful warrior of legend, but not all is what it seems with Mikey, and even the greatest fantasy shatters in the face of reality. So it's using like a trope what's used a lot in Japanese manga and anime, which is called isekai, where somebody from our world ends up in an alternate universe, or they get reincarnated in another universe or a game or something like that. There's a nice introduction here by Joshua Williamson. The artwork, as you can see, is really nice. So this sets up the scene when Mikey disappears, and then he comes back mysteriously a year later as a full-ass adult, but like this this warrior with all these weapons, etc. So he's only been gone for a year, but time in this other land is moves differently. So a year in our time can be years in that time. So he left about when he was about 9. He's come back in his mid-20s. So he's got an older brother called Brennan, who's now his younger brother. But during that year, obviously, the whole family dynamic has deconstructed. His father got blamed for Mikey disappearing. People accusing him of being child killer and so on. And he went to alcoholism, and his wife just resents him and blames him for all that's happened. So that's the initial setup for the story. The FBI gets involved, and as you can see, the artwork is just gorgeous. And they don't believe that Mike is who he says he is, but his dad does believe him. And so, long story, but he's saying he's on a quest for good and he's got to save the Earth, etc. But there's this evil entity that's encompassing him and whispering to him all the time. And he's basically come to Earth to kill 5 mages who are meant to be the good guys. So why is he doing that? And so that goes on for the majority of the time. And he escapes, runs away with his brother and his dad. Like I said, the mother resents the dad. But the other people from that land appears as well, including one of the girl who he basically grew up with in that world, and she's pregnant with his child. So that sets the scenario, and that's the guy who raised him, called Ruck, in the world, who's an orc, and that's the Nevermind, who's the evil presence in his life, and that's the witch who was sent by Law, who's the big bad, to kill him. So I'm really just skimming through because I don't want to spoil too much. But the initial, I'd say, this book, Volume One, basically sets all the players in, but also puts all the players in place. Like there's this guy who takes over the running of the FBI, but he's not who he seems. It turns out he's one of the mages who Mike has been sent to kill, disguised as a human. Like I said, his wife comes to Earth as well, Mikey's wife, and she's with child. So it becomes almost like this fantasy road movie initially. And I'm just looking through, just showing this. Like, I can't give you too much because there's so much that happens. It will ruin the pleasant surprises from all the twists and turns. There's lots of rug pulls. There's lots of revelations. People who you think are bad guys turn out to be good guys, and vice versa. And like I said, Mike is far from far from. Alexa, stop. Interruption there by Alexa. We're going to couples counselling. So, like I said, Mike is trying to find all these mages to kill them because he's under the influence of Law, the big bad. So, as you can see, it says here, Chapter 3, Allies and Enemies. And again, just look at when it flashes back to the fantasy lands. So, what it does, like a Lost in a lot of the issues, where it has the current storyline going on in Earth, and then it shows you his backstory as he's growing up. So it fills in the blanks when he's in that fantasy land. And it also delves on the sort of dysfunctional elements of his family as well. And the whole book really is like this big healing arc between him and his family. There's a lot of resentment, a lot of hate, a lot of hatred, a lot of hurt. This is one of the mages that he's sent out to kill, but the mage overpowers him. And the mage has a very important part to play in his life and his family's life, which I don't want to ruin. And like I said, he's another mage disguised as the FBI chief. So the fantasy lands now are kind of like encompassing on our world. And she's one of the other mages. She's on Earth and she's basically built up this huge amount of wealth while she's been on Earth. She's one of the richest women in the world. And initially she comes across as like this really nice character. But again, there's a big reveal, which I don't want to go into, that shows him the time passing while he was on that in that other realm. And so this assassin this mage who Mikey was trying to kill ends up coming to the defense of Mikey and his family, and it reveals why on this page, so we won't go into that. But again, just how it has these big impactful spreads as well. Andrei Bressans could do just everyday talking heads, one page, and then he switches it up to these bloody amazing spreads like this. So that's Law, the big bad. That's the face he normally has, which is like this decaying, monstrous face. But he is, in effect, actually, that's his real face. But because he's like this all powerful mage, but he puts it on to strike fear into his enemies. And there's so much world building, but it's done very organically. Um, and so, like I said, she gets revealed to be not as sweet natured as we expected. She's basically she's basically there's a connection with her and Law, the big bad, and she's basically out to get what she can get. She's got a very warped view of what's right and what's just, and she'll go by any means to get what she wants. Nice, heartwarming, reunited moment there. But he's still struggling with the Nevermind corruption. So we won't go into that because that's a big spoiler. That's so grim, but so cool. And again, just look at this epic battle here. So it ends on a cliffhanger, book one. This is what made me read book two straight away, where his elder brother, who looks now like his younger brother, Brandon, gets kidnapped by the witch, who's basically the right hand man of Lord the Big Bad. So we move on to book two, which this is the cover of. And Andrei Bressan does the introduction in this one, which is a nice kind of like tag team. So you got Joshua Williamson doing book one, Andrei Bressan does book two. So this book is kind of like the redemption arc for Mikey. He realizes that wool's been pulled over his eyes. He's in this kind of like stasis at the moment, and this guy here, that mage, who I don't want to reveal too much about, is basically watching over him as he's in like this tank, kind of like coffin kind of thing, and he's reaching into his mind psychically. But this team, it's very much a James Bond moment. This team here, this like Secret Service team, they board the train and pretend to be like tourists, etc. So they're in disguise, and they infiltrate the family, want to know more about them. While in Mikey's mind, this battle's going on as he's trying to get to the mystery of how Law has got his clutches into Mikey's mind. So this guy here of that Secret Service team is called Boomer. Again, just look at that. So again, this is back in Mikey's mind, this big battle going on. But during that time, Mikey's wife, because obviously she can sense magic, she realizes that he is not who he says he is. And so basically the shit hits the fan, a scuffling happens. As Mikey's dad's kind of like being held off, he disengages this grenade and it causes a huge explosion on the train. The train gets derailed. Meanwhile, like I said, that mage is still in the psychic plane with Mikey. So this devastation occurs, and again, just amazing artwork. And again, I'm skimming over a lot because there's so much revelation that will ruin it for you if I tell you all about it. So just quickly look through. But it ends up that Boomer, he appeared in the earlier volume one, in the first issue or the second issue, and it looked like he was working for Brooks, but it's the other way around. He's actually working for a secret elite service, and he shows Brooks, who's the FBI agent who's interrogating Mikey at the beginning, his headquarters, and they are aware of that there's magic coming seeping into our world. And like I said, Brandon was kidnapped at the end of book one, so it shows you what's happening with him, and it goes more into detail with that other maid, the one who's one of the richest women in the world, and then it reveals how she is, like how kind of like um, two faced she is, and how kind of like corrupt she is as well. And it's always been with her. Some really nice backstory here about the relationship with Rook and Mikey. Rook's such a cool character, and again, I don't want to reveal too much about that because things happen. And then this is where Brennan embraces his magic abilities. So it turns out he could actually be more powerful than Mikey. So they're in Paris, and Mikey and the rest of the gang come to Paris to try and rescue them. And again, the shit hits the fan, but in a really cool way. I mean, just look at that. I just want to, but that so that chapter ends on a cool bit where he basically meets Boomer and says, "We've so you want to talk to my family? Let's talk." So he gets taken in by them, and it turns out that Boomer's not a bad guy; he's a good guy, and him and Mikey actually bond over it. He explains what his secret agency does, and they end up forming an alliance. They're treating Brandon to see if they can help him. So yeah, they end up becoming firm friends, and it's a really nice development over issues. But each character is so fully formed, and the again, just look at that the journey that each one takes is so interesting. There's no like periphery character. Each character has an important part to play, and the when you think about this, it's just one artist on all 50 issues, and the colorist as well cannot be ignored. The colors are by um, Adriana Lucas. The colors are just spectacular. I love how they're not using earthy tones or muddy tones like a lot of books do for like fantasy or grimdark kind of stories. As I mentioned in my little preview, this was such a nice surprise. This massive fold-out page. It and you've got to really, you can only really get the benefits by reading it yourself. You're showing this big battle. This bit opens up more about the history of law. So it turns out when he was young, he actually did cross over to our world, and it's very brutal, his encounter. Let's just leave it that way. Leave it like that, I mean. But it turns out he has a league of werewolves working for him who infiltrate the compound of the Secret Service, and a big bloody battle occurs, and it's very bloody, as you can see. And Rook returns, but we won't. I don't want to dwell on that because need you. There's a lot of emotion in that one, so you need to read that for yourself. And this leads up to the confrontation, like the big boss battle, which they've been building up to between Mikey and Law. And it reminds me very much of the that classic Simonson issue where each page was a splash page for four. And they've kind of done it with this to show the magnitude and the visceral nature of the battle. Extremely bloody, extremely epic. But we will skim over that. So that concludes that part. Um, Brennan has become like a full mage now. Boomer is also affected by the outcome of the war in a way. They open up the gateway to the other land, and Mikey's parents go over to help see what they can do to just help prepare the gateway. and they find some children there. So they end up missing. This is a bit of a spoiler. They end up missing the portal back, and as with Mikey, when you get cut off there for a day, a month or 2 months can pass by, so they're stuck there until they can find a way back. And so the final book, which is unusual for a series like this or for any series, normal books would end after the big battle has been completed, but this has a whole 6-issue arc of the epilogue, and it is so satisfying that they do this because it fills in so many gaps. It tells you what goes on with their lives and what they need to do to survive in this new world, what's been created because of the after effects of the whole battle. It's affected both our Earth and the other realm. I won't show you that page because something happens to Boomer, which is kind of cool and badass, but you need to see it for yourself. And I think Boomer actually becomes my favourite character, him and Rook. But yeah, it's just so cool. The friendships that built up, the camaraderie, the dialogue, the family, the family developments, which are done in a very real way. The other thing that made me laugh, there's a bit here where they show the scene in London, and it's like it's like it's the 1800s, like the Victorian bobbies. What's that all about? Looks like he's just got the reference from like an old Victorian photograph of the police. But it shoots about all over, but for purpose, and that's what I love about it. It fleshes out the characters even more, and you know what their roles are. It basically spells out what their roles are going to be in this new world, what they need to do to make this new world survive. So there's a lot of completion, and that's Mikey's parents. Like I said, they in our world only about a year's passed by, but in their world it's been 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And it even shows you the repercussions, what happens to the witch. And then there's a really nice final epilogue, which was the added on bit, and then you have all the extra bump. So, like I said, I'm not telling you how it's going to end. I don't want to because it'll ruin it for you. You need to read this for yourself, even if you don't normally buy deluxe ones. This is the way to read this series. It was amazing. It was a ride. I'll definitely read it again. Give it another few years, and I'll read it again. I'd say this is Josh Williamson's best work he's ever done. And because it's a creator-owned book, you don't have that safety blanket of thinking that, oh, it's okay. If somebody dies, they'll come back like you can with a DC or Marvel comic. No. Once they're gone, they're gone. Or they could be radically changed permanently. Yeah, I would give this whole series a 9.5 out of 10. It's a close 10. It really is. Even if you don't buy collected editions like this normally, I would say this is the way to go to read this series. The books are gorgeous. The paper quality is high quality. I think it's a really reasonable price for 25 issues per book. It's just been a blast. The artwork by Andrei Bressans is breathtaking. The colouring is amazing. It was a pleasure to read. So this gets my highest approval. And do yourself a favour if you want to read a very original, very exciting, very emotional, very rewarding fantasy series. Oh, I hate this medication. It's fucking up everything. Can't even speak. Then do buy this series. Okay, bye.